I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Hilton Kelley. Mr. Kelley is from the town of Port Arthur, also on the Gulf Coast. He left Port Arthur to go to Hollywood, became a stuntman, and when he returned home for a visit to Port Arthur in 2000, he was shocked by the decline of his hometown, the quantity of air pollution, the number of sick people, the economic situation, and was devastated by that. He was working on a TV series with Don Johnson and Cheech Marin and felt this tug pulling at him to go home to do something about his community, and he did. He left that behind and went home, and he's known as a force of nature in Port Arthur. He has been awarded the in 2011, he was awarded the Goldman Award, which is awarded to 6 individuals, 1 from each continent, and he was awarded that award for North America for his tremendous work in fighting for his community that is affected by so many surrounding refineries. We're going to hear more from Mr. Hilton Kelley and his experience and what he would like to share and inform this community about. So without further ado, Mr. Hilton Kelley.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. As stated, my name is Hilton Kelley. I'm the founder and director of an organization called the Community Empower, and that's IN-POWER, Community Empower and Development Association, located in Port Arthur, Texas. I never thought of myself really as an activist, but I grew up in the city of Port Arthur, Texas. I was born at 1202 E Carver Terrace in the government housing project in the back bedroom. A midwife brought me into the world. When I was growing up in West Port Arthur, we grew up smelling the sulfur odor. It smells like rotten eggs. And it was common to us. We didn't know really what fresh air smelled like until one day we left there. We went to a town called Dayton, Texas. My uncle lived out in the woods. And we just couldn't believe that the air didn't stink. This is what we were used to. We grew up hearing stories about people dying from cancer. I've seen kids growing up right alongside me with severe skin disorders. The skin just so flaky from the chemicals landing on the skin just from out of the air. Before 1970, we didn't have an environmental protection agency. So the industries were allowed to dump toxins into the air without any type of oversight from any type of agency. And even today, there are tons and tons of emissions that are being dumped into our air, some of it legal and some of it illegal. You got startup and shutdown malfunctions. All these chemicals are being dumped at various times. We have more than 4 major oil refineries in the city of Port Arthur, with Motiva being the largest. Motiva in 2010 went from, it was 325,000 barrels of oil per day to 625,000 barrels of oil per day. Port Arthur, Texas is not out of the woods by a long shot. But what I was able to do with the help of Benny, with help of people like Neil Carmen and Judith, who's here, who have campaigned with me. Well, I go to her community, she comes to mine, we fight together many times, but many times we have to fight alone. We have got them to reduce their emissions some. But the fight is long from over, because the emissions continue to be dumped into the air that we breathe. Just this Saturday, I was sitting at a restaurant that I own right there in West Port Arthur. I try to serve the underserved community where I live. And we had this strange odor come over the building, and I knew exactly what it was. Sulfur dioxide, SO2, if you will. The odors were so horrific to where it makes your nose sting, and you're constantly trying to clear your throat. One of the facilities was having the emission event, so I called TCEQ. TCEQ said they would come out and check it out. But most of the time when they come out, they never really find anything. Why? It's not to say that that chemical isn't present. It's just to say that it's not above their standards. Now, you may be more susceptible to these chemicals, or that child sitting on his father's lap may be more susceptible to those chemicals because of his lung capacity, because he's so young and his immune system is still developing. But yet, the state will say, well, it's okay to dump this much of sulfur dioxide into the air. It's okay to release this much ammonia, sulfuric acid into the air. And as Judith said earlier, the cumulative impact. We have yet to have a cumulative impact done in our community as well. And yet we have this toxic soup of chemicals that are being emitted from these refineries. So this is why I picked up the torch, because I was sick and tired of seeing my young people dying. We have a disproportionate number of people with cancer. We have a disproportionate number of our kids with respiratory problems. And just to give you a snapshot, most people who have children under the age of 10, most of those kids, 1 out of 5 households have a child that have to use a nebulizer and take it to school with them. This is not what you want. And if that wind direction is pushing those fumes directly toward this community, heed the warning of the elders that spoke here today. And before I leave, I would like for the video that I had sent you guys to be played. Just look at this for a minute, please.
Hilton Kelley grew up in a poor African-American neighborhood.
Well, I was born and raised in Port Arthur, Texas, right next to the refineries.
Kelley left Port Arthur as a young adult and was living in California. When he visited his hometown in 2000, he was appalled at the condition of his neighborhood.
People are living at or below the poverty line, right next to so much wealth due to lack of jobs. Yet we have to bear the brunt of the toxic waste that's emitted from these facilities.
Kelley was working as an actor in California when he decided to take on a new role. He stayed in Port Arthur to help people living near the refineries, and he discovered that large amounts of toxins were being released into the air.
And I found that a lot of people were ill. Usually it's cancer related. And there was a large number of kids here with respiratory problems.
He learned about policies governing industrial pollution and stepped up to lead the local movement to clean up Port Arthur.
How many people know a child with acute asthma?
I noticed when I went back there to visit that initially that no one seemed to be doing anything about this problem. So I decided that I would take it up by myself to do what I could to bring attention to the matter and start to fight these big polluters head on, to do what I could to get the emission reductions that were needed.
Kelley trained locals to measure air quality.
I started educating the public on what was going on and how they were being taken advantage of and how they were being systematically poisoned.
In 2006, Motiva Enterprises, a subsidiary of the giant Shell Oil Company, announced it was expanding its Port Arthur facility. Kelley convinced Motiva to start a $3.5 million fund to increase pollution controls and promote economic revitalization in the area. He also led a campaign to stop another company from importing toxic liquids from Mexico for incineration at its Port Arthur plant.
We did not want that toxic stuff released into our environment, so we fought tooth and nail to get it stopped.
Kelley is one of 6 environmentalists from different parts of the world who received the annual Goldman Award, along with $150,000. He says he will use part of the money to continue his fight. Deborah Block, VOA News.
I know my time is up, but this is the first time I've ever added this to my presentation, but I want you to look at something. This is an obituary program. Darlene Ford, it's my classmate. She just passed away December the 14th, 2016, cancer. I discovered she had cancer 3 months before she passed, and I started going by and visiting with her. The last time I went to visit with her, she didn't feel good because she had been going through chemo. She died December the 14th, 2016. This is her mother. Her mother died 6 months prior to her death, both from cancer, mother and daughter, within 1 year. And this story does not stand alone. There are several other families in the city of Port Arthur that have to breathe the dangerous toxins that refineries and chemical plants put out every year that have gone through this same scenario. think about this situation. Think about Raven. Do you really want this? Thank you.